I got an email from a local viewer and he just picked up this 1999 C5 with only 30,000 miles on it, and after a quick visual overview, it appears to be in very good condition. The most concerning issue that jumps out at me is that the anti-lock brake system lights are lit up on the gauge cluster, and he is aware that he could have an EBCM issue or electronic brake control module issue, and he's also aware that on these early C5s from 97 to 2000, sometimes they're not repairable. So I'll be scanning all of the various modules and pulling the codes for the EBCM. Hopefully it ends up being something simple like a bad wheel speed sensor that's causing the ABS system not to work. The new owner was aware that the tires on the car were very old, and with only 30,000 miles on this C5, they might have been the originals, so he's already gone ahead and replaced all 4 of them. The air conditioning on the car does not work, and he was aware of that when he bought it. I let him know that I can only do the very basics when it comes to air conditioning systems, so I'll go ahead and take a look at it, see if I can find out what the problem might be. That way at least he'll hopefully have some information in hand when he talks to another shop with the right technicians, the right training and equipment, and the necessary certifications to repair the air conditioning. The C5's battery doesn't seem to want to hold a charge. He believes it's about a 1-year-old traditional lead acid style battery. He plans to replace it in the near future anyway with an AGM or absorbed glass mat battery in order to protect against any potential acid leaking down onto the computer system and the wiring underneath the battery, causing problems like this. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and perform 3 basic tests. Number 1, with the car running, I'll check and make sure that the alternator is actually charging the battery. Number 2, I'll go ahead and charge the battery to a full state of charge, and then using a load tester, I'll test it to get an idea of its current condition. And number 3, using a multimeter, I'll go ahead and perform a parasitic draw test to see how many milliamps are being drawn when everything is shut off to make sure it's not excessive. Unfortunately, the C5 did not come with any maintenance history, but it did come with a Carfax, which gives us some very useful information. Number 1, it says the vehicle has about 30,000 miles on it, which matches what's on the gauge cluster. Number 2, it lists a total of 2 owners, and one of them had the car for 8 years, and the second one owned it for 18 years. The Carfax tells us it spent its entire life in the state of Illinois, which means there should be very little, if any, sun damage on the paint or the interior. It's a Midwest state, but since almost nobody ever drives these cars in the winter, I'm sure when we put it up on the lift, we'll see that the underside is spotless and that it was stored during the winter. The Carfax indicates that there have been no accidents reported. Now obviously that doesn't mean 100% that it's never been in an accident, but it's a good sign, and chances are it hasn't been in a serious accident. The Carfax does highlight one potential concern. Back in 2010, this car had 27,000 miles on it. Here we are 15 years later, and it's only got 30,000 miles on it. Do the math, that's 200 miles a year. That means there were likely several periods of time where the car may have sat for a few years in a row, which means the gas could have gotten stale, and sometimes that can cause problems with the fuel system and, more importantly, the fuel injectors. In fact, when he was test driving the car, it seemed to run a little bit rough. They took it in the back, and apparently they changed out the spark plug in cylinder number 5, and that fixed the problem. Could that actually have been a fuel system related problem? Maybe, maybe not. One of the first things I'll be doing with this car is taking a test drive while scanning with HP tuners to get a good idea of how the engine's running, in addition to what I can feel by actually driving it. And also, before test driving the car, I'll scan the engine's computer in all 10 or so of the various modules to see which codes have accumulated over time. Then we'll go ahead and clear those codes and see which ones come back on after the test drive. The new owner bought the C5 from a classic vehicle consignment lot located in a nearby state. They were asking $17,000 for it, but after talking about the anti-lock brake issue and the air conditioning issue and considerable back and forth, he ended up getting the car for $12,000. And in my opinion, A 99 C5 that appears to be in excellent condition with only 30,000 miles is a pretty good deal. The salesman claimed that the vehicle's fluids were good, but I spoke to the owner, and after discussing the car and his plans for it, he's decided to go ahead and have me do a comprehensive inspection and will also change out most of the fluids. The new owner has also expressed interest in picking up a few more horsepower if there's some low-cost ways to do so. I'm thinking of a cold air intake, especially on these early 97 to 2000 C5s. Their air intake systems were smaller and more restrictive, so they stand to gain a little bit more by an aftermarket system. Oh, and actually the first thing that popped into my head, since this is an automatic equipped car, is it probably has the 273 rear end gears like most of them do, and that makes them kind of pokey from 0 to 30 miles per hour. So I took a look at the RPO codes inside the glove box, and he hit the jackpot. This one has the G90 and G92 codes, which means it came with the 315 rear differential gears, and that's a huge benefit when accelerating off the line. The other thing that pops into my head is having the cooling fans come on a little bit sooner. That equals a cooler motor, which is a cooler engine bay, helps prevent that heat soak a little bit so you don't lose as much horsepower on those hot summer days when you're not moving very quickly. And since it's fall right now and the car is still pretty new to him, I think he's gonna hold off on any mods until perhaps next spring. All right, well, that's more talking than I had intended to do. My voice is a little bit sore, so let's get to work.
Toys for life.
First thing I always do is a full system scan of the engine, computer, and all 10 or so of the various modules. There are usually a bunch of codes, especially if they haven't been cleared in a long time. I was really curious though to see which ABS codes there would be, but as it turns out, the EBCM module was not communicating at all with the network, so it disappears from the list, and that's not good. Looking at the codes stored in the engine computer, we have a P1571, which means the engine computer is not seeing the expected signal from the EBCM regarding whether or not power reduction is needed due to poor traction. We also have a U1040 diagnostic trouble code, which says the C5 has lost communications with the ABS/traction control system. So I did notice the sticker on here says 1024, so that's a pretty new battery, but I think it's had a rough life and been discharged for too long. So I'm going to swap in. I have another Duracell AGM battery here. It's a little weak. It's not shot, but it's a lot better than this one for the testing we need to do and to be able to do the fuel injector test. I'm going to swap that in. One thing I noticed is the battery is bolted down here as it should be, but it's really loose. I don't know if they just missed the clamp on the backside, but we'll take the battery out and find out. Instantly, I'm seeing a couple things. One, I see minor signs that there's been some acid leak, but not bad from what I've seen in the past. But the 3 bolts that hold this battery tray down are missing. The battery tray is just sitting there. So that makes me always wonder, why in the heck was somebody inside here taking apart the battery tray? Let's take a look underneath and see if there's more clues. Underneath the battery tray, things look really clean. I don't see any signs of major battery acid leak, so that's really good. I don't know why they had that tray off and lost the bolts. That's odd. I did find one of these laying down here, so maybe they lost one of the battery terminals and were trying to find it. They gave up and put another one in. I'm not sure. Oh, I see a socket down there too. Maybe they were trying to retrieve that socket. I'm not sure. We'll get that out of there. Other than that, everything under here really looks good. So we'll get some new bolts and bolt that battery tray down as it should be. I temporarily put in a different battery that I know to be good enough for testing. Now let's test the 3 fuses for the anti-lock brake system. The first one is fuse 5, and it's a small 10 amp fuse. The second one is fuse number 52, and the third one is fuse number 53. All 3 tested good, so we know we don't have a direct short anywhere. All right, so here is the BPMV, the pump motor. The EBCM is over here. I've got the main wiring harness off. I just wanted to take a look Those terminals look all nice and clean. I don't see any signs of corrosion. So no smoking gun there as far as a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and reseat this onto the EBCM and give it another test and see if we have communication with the EBCM. I'm going to test the positives on the EBCM connector. It's pin A, D, and E. And I've got the ignition on as well for the pin A. So here's pin A. That lights up. Pin D, pin E. So those are all getting good power. I'm going to switch it over so that the test light now has a positive. And I'm going to test the ground, which is pin B. And then here's the other ground that goes to the motor. So the powers and grounds unfortunately check out on the EBCM. I also run through the same test using a larger 2.5 amp load just to make sure the circuit's got sufficient power to trigger the EBCM. This is hooked up to battery positive through the load. So I'm testing the ground, which is terminal B, and that's right here. And that lights up nice and bright, which means the ground is good. I did the same thing for the positives as well. And I'm satisfied we have a circuit capable of delivering the proper amperage to the EBCM. In one last test, I've got the test light hooked up to the positive on the battery. I want to make sure that the EBCM is getting a good ground through this ground wire, and it is. So I'm convinced that unfortunately this EBCM is probably toast. Well, that's a wrap on part 1. Be sure to come back for part 2, where unfortunately we find yet another nail in the EBCM's coffin. We'll thoroughly diagnose the electrical system to see if we can find out why the battery keeps dying so quickly, and we'll balance test all 8 of the fuel injectors to make sure stale gas through the years didn't clog 1 or 2 of them up. So be sure to hit that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching.